Chapter 3 has been broken down into four different parts because it's long and involved, but it also lends itself to being broken down into four different parts. The whole chapter covers the environmental analysis. Part 1 covers an overview of the environmental analysis and the macro analysis. The macro analysis is the general business climate. This is a great big piece. We'll talk more specifically about it in a minute. Within that is the micro analysis. This has to do with the industry and what is going on in the industry. Finally, we look at the internal analysis, what's going on within the business itself. And we have very specific tools for being able to do each of these three analyses. Together, we'll take that information and create the SWOT. The microenvironmental analysis. It's the very first step that we take in the SWOT. The thing about it that you have to remember is it's about the general business climate, not about your business specifically. It's about what's going on in the economy, what's going on in technology. Okay, it's not about what technology your business uses, for example. The industry, as you define it for the entire SWOT analysis, can be as broad or as narrow as you want it to be. For example, McDonald's. McDonald's could be a restaurant. McDonald's could be fast food restaurants. McDonald's could be fast food restaurants that serve primarily hamburgers. So it's how you want to look at it. And mainly what the macro environmental analysis looks at are major issues and projected changes in the business climate in general. Or the macro environmental analysis will lead to the OT, or the opportunities and threats in the SWOT analysis. The tool that we use for the macro environmental analysis is called STEP, or PEST. Most people call it STEP, so that's the way we'll refer to it. S stands for sociocultural and demographics. T stands for technology. E stands for economic. And P stands for political and legal. Each of these four areas must be addressed in the analysis. Sociocultural and demographics. Sociocultural deals with societal values that can impact your industry and thus indirectly impacting your business. When women started getting higher positions in businesses, then the need for clothing companies to make business suits for women became more important. So if you're a clothing line, this might have been something that would have impacted you. Sociocultural changes can come from a lot of places. We see them come about because of changes in technology. For example, it's acceptable to many people to interrupt a conversation with a person you're with to answer your phone. They might be medical. It's no longer acceptable to smoke, for example. So societal and cultural issues can come from a lot of different places. Some can be important for the industry in general, but not a specific business. The creation of e-cigarettes, for example, might be important not only to the cigarette business, but also to places that sell cigarettes. But it may not be really important to Albertsons in and of itself. Demographics are not just your demographics or target markets. Sometimes it's important to know that people are moving to rural areas, or that people are living longer, or that the baby boomers are pretty much retiring. those things might be important. The next item in the step analysis is technology. Here, the big thing you want to remember is that we are not just talking about information technology. We are not just talking about computers. But think about technology that can help in a roundabout way. For example, transportation technology, the idea that things can be shipped faster, or that the technology has changed to make things greener. And, if you're a health food store, maybe that's a cool thing to be able to talk about. So all kinds of technology have to be considered. And it's not what the business does, but what is available to members of the industry. If you have a small business, it may not use a big customer relationship management software, but that software is available. The third one is economic. This one's a little bit tricky. It's the general economic outlook, for one thing. And a bad economy is not always bad for all industries. It might be a bad economy for appliance sellers or manufacturers, but it's probably not as bad as it is for appliance repairmen. They might find that the economy is pretty good. The other thing that you have to consider is hiring. When people are out of work, when the unemployment rate is high, you have a much better hiring pool. So that's a good thing about a bad economy. Don't forget things like loan availability, interest rates, unemployment, disposable income, inflation, all those kinds of things that deal with the economic outlook. And the last is political and legal. And this one's another one that's a little bit tricky. Legal issues that impact the industry are the things that we start with: changes to minimum wage, if regulations are changing, if there are specific laws to your industry, plus the general laws that all businesses have to follow, things like OSHA and the IRS and zoning and minimum wage and things like those. Political. You have to remember that different political parties have different views about things. This is especially important if we have an upcoming election, because some are favorable to some industries, some are favorable to other industries. And sometimes things that politicians do impact societal values. For example, when President Obama decided that instead of buying a purebred dog, they were going to get shelter dog, the number of adoptions from shelters went way up. There are some caveats here, some things that you should remember. The order isn't important, but all 4 items have to be included. Sometimes it's not clear what category should be used. In my President Obama example, that might go in political because he's president, but it might go in societal values. Take your best guess. List it in both places if you want, and if it makes any kind of sense, then it'll be fine wherever you put it. The presentation, and by this I mean how you write the macro analysis. You can use bullets or paragraphs. I prefer bullets, but sometimes paragraphs work better. Whenever you can, group things together. For example, if you're going to talk about loans, then you might want to talk about availability, interest rates, the tightening of how much they'll loan a new small business. Explain enough that a non-business person can understand it, but don't beat it to death. Just say what you have to say. Some more information about presenting. You do it in this order. Generally, you write an introduction. What is a macro analysis and why do we want one? What are sociocultural and demographics and what issues impact us? What is technology and what issues impact us? What is the economic or economy outlook? What are we talking about? And the political legal issues. Political and legal. Politics play no explicit role in pet stores. Pet ownership is deemed acceptable and desirable by most political parties. So we address the political issue. Pet stores must adhere to all standard, local, state, and federal laws that are generally required of businesses, such as blah, blah, blah. Additional laws and pending regulations that are specific and important to the industry are federal laws dealing with animal welfare, prohibited pet laws. You might put changes to minimum wage, those kinds of things. Now, the one thing in here that you'll see that I have really emphasized is this statement that says pet stores must adhere to all standard local, state, and federal laws that are generally required of businesses, such as zoning, OSHA, taxes, EEOC, and overtime pay. You can spend the next 16 weeks writing down every law that all businesses have to follow, but you can't ignore them. So if you will put a statement like this in your macro analysis, then that will cover the stuff that business people know that they have to deal with. Things to remember: it's about the business climate as a whole, not about your business. It's how it could impact the industry, and because of the industry, then the organization. Never, never, never use a company name in macro because it has nothing to do with the business specifically. Never say there is nothing in a category that affects a company. The macro analysis is based on things that the company cannot change by itself. Cite your sources. And that is the end of Chapter 3, Part 1.